Hello, Culture Matters Podcast. I am excited to introduce you to our guest. Before I do that, here's a quote just for this episode. Remember, before you can be great, you've got to be good. Before you can be good, you've got to be bad. But before you can even be bad, you've got to try. Art Williams, our guest today, is a friend of a friend, longtime supporter of Culture Matters, who, if you haven't listened to Brian Gunn on the Culture Matters podcast, our guest today is someone that works very closely with them that actually came up on our last episode with my dear friend, the one and only Brian Gunn. They've been mentoring, coaching, advising, leaning in, and helping those seeking financial wisdom, financial savvy, financial thoughtfulness, future planning. They are a financial coach and investment advisor representative for well over a decade and a background in coaching in another context. I'm very excited to have you on the show, Chris Crail. Thanks for coming on the Culture Matters podcast, especially such a uh, great timing considering some of the macro things that are happening in our culture today when it comes to the financial markets. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Jay. I appreciate you having me on.
I like from a in the short term, considering we're filming this in March and it'll be out this month, some questions or FAQs you're getting from clients, from prospective clients, based on the macro, based on uh, the markets, based on the perception of the economy and things. What are some frequently asked questions that you're getting right now that maybe our listeners might be asking themselves or others in their life that are not necessarily qualified to give them a viewpoint?
Yes, great question, Jay. There's a lot of noise out there right now with everything going on. The stock market has been a little up and down the last few weeks, and there's been a lot of panic. But in my opinion, a lot of it is noise, as it often is. The news often tries to scare us, into getting panicked and worried. But for the most part, especially at least what we've dealt with so far, the stock market goes through ups and downs, and typically every year and a half to 2 years, there's an event like this where the market might drop 10 or 15%. It's really not uncommon. So I wouldn't be too worried about that. There obviously are some different, regulatory changes and a lot going on in the country and in the world right now. But, overall, there's a lot of, positive news as far as that goes. And I think, I wouldn't worry too much, about the investments and things like that, particularly if you have a long time horizon. So, just every situation's a little bit unique and different, and certainly some people should probably reevaluate where they are. But I don't see any reason to panic or move everything to a cash position right now or anything like that.
What would you say is the difference between your customers and the general thought process? Is there a difference?
I mean, overall, no. I mean, I really prepare my clients as best I can to, when they're investing, that it's a long-term approach. Even if they're 50, or even if they're 60 and going to be retiring in a few years, they're not going to take all their money out at once. The majority of it's still going to stay invested. And so just taking a long-term approach, and that what happens in a week, a month, even in most cases a year, is relatively unimportant to the overall success, of your investments. And I would hope that other advisors do that, but I have gotten a couple calls the last few weeks, but honestly, very few. Really only about two or three calls. So most people are, seeming to be fine. Maybe they're just not calling me yet, but I haven't heard from too many people yet. So
What would you say are some of the big mistakes that people unwittingly make
specific to investing or across the board?
in the times, the news clipping times, and
Yeah, I mean, definitely with investments, it's, selling panic selling, hearing something, is going down or seeing your account go down and panic selling. When you're invested properly, and you leave your money there, people who lost a lot of money in 2008, if they left their money where it was, they probably came back within about 18 months, from the
How many
bottom of the
people do
market.
you know that have bought high and sold low that have built wealth? Do
Yeah,
you know anybody? Do you know
not,
any?
no, 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 that doesn't happen too often. It's definitely better to do the opposite,
I'm
of
laughing
course.
at my own jokes. I could do that. Like,
But no, no, that doesn't happen too often. But the thing is, we don't know the timing of things, and we don't know when low and when high is going to happen until after it's happened. So the best way to invest is just to continue to invest month after month, keep putting money in every month. One concept called dollar cost averaging, where you just continue to put in. Most of us do this unknowingly in our 401ks. If we put money in every month, 5% of our paycheck or whatever it is, we are dollar cost averaging. We are buying, at all times. So when the market's down, those same dollars are actually helping us acquire more
do you
shares. We're getting a
find that
discount.
many of, or like what percentage of your customers over the lifetime of your career drink like Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts? I mean, anecdotally, this is totally anecdotal.
Percentage wise, I'd have a hard time saying, but I'd say less after working with me than before working with me. I
Yeah.
don't necessarily tell them to change it, but I go through and analyze where somebody is and where their money's going and let them decide how important Starbucks and some of those other things are to them.
So what's the thought process or philosophy behind even looking at that as an example?
Well, I mean, I think we all know how expensive a cup of coffee has become. And so, $5 a day, that's $150 a month. $150 a month, for a 40-year time frame. I mean, that can turn into a lot of money, potentially over $1 million. So I think when people look at the long-term aspects of that $5 a day, they see the, possibilities that put to build wealth for themselves.
We had a recent guest on that said that when he was a little boy, he was walking with his grandfather and wanted a hot dog, and it was $1. And he asked him for the hot dog, and he said, "No. Do you know what that dollar is going to be in 50 years? $1,000." And the gentleman, Chris, said he learned two lessons: the power of compounding and to bring my own money when I'm with my grandfather.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah. No, it's true. Yep.
The reason that Starbucks came to mind was I was thinking about, you know, dollar cost averaging works the other way too. If I buy something every day, I'm like investing into that company without owning the stock.
Yeah.
Just fleeting thought that came in my mind when you were elaborating.
Absolutely. And I do tell people that often when they do go frequent a certain particular place,
Mm.
I say, wouldn't you rather, be getting a couple pennies back on that coffee you're buying every month, or every day, whatever it might be. So a lot of clients do want to own the things that they purchase.
There are a lot of entrepreneurs and executives that listen to the show, but what do the everyday person, what are some concerns, in the last decade plus of your tenure in the space as a helper, as a coach? What are the everyday concerns of people? You know,
I mean,
this
certainly
might be
right.
the employees that work for many of the entrepreneurs that listen to the show. Like, what are their concerns, right? If we could build a bridge of empathy, because I feel as though many people lose sight as the organization grows and grows and grows.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's true. I think right now a lot of people are honestly just worried about covering all the costs. Over the last 30, 40 years, obviously we've seen inflation, we've seen a lot of those things, but there's also a lot more things to spend money on than our parents had and our grandparents had to spend money on. Cell phone, internet. Even if we go to cable TV, even that's only been around for 35 years or so. A lot of these costs that are new in the marketplace that have added to what we spend money on and have minimized what we can save and do other things. So I think that our money, is definitely stretched thinner these days than it's ever been before. And when you compound inflation and things like that into the mix and the cost of living just continuing to go up, it's a challenge. So I think there's a lot of people that don't feel as though they can save money. In most cases, they do have some to save, but they often have to cut some things and maybe make some sacrifices, like Starbucks or like cable TV or whatever those things are. And not everyone is willing to make those sacrifices, unfortunately, and them and their family may suffer long term if they don't, or find a way to make more money. That's tell people all the time, you got to either make more money or spend less, or do both. That's really the
Do
only
you
way
find
to.
that people like one more than the other or works more?
Most people want to make more money, I think. That's what I've seen. They don't necessarily want to cut out what they're doing. They'd rather just make more to do more. But that's not always sustainable. Not everybody can go out and make more money. So, um, that's where I encourage people and show them the ways that they can trim some of the fat from their budget and put more away for the future.
How often do you see the most successful clients um, meet with, help, and go through current and future thoughts around finances?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say usually a few times a year, with the most successful clients. They're staying on top of things. They typically reach out to me to do a check-in and a review before I even have a chance to reach them, because they're eager to see what progress they've made and or update me to any changes going on. Uh, so yeah, those are the best ones for sure. Well,
Hmm. How about some misnomers that you found, like, uh, hey, we think this is a good idea, or that's the way to go about it, and it's completely the opposite? Are there patterns of misnomers when it comes to personal finances that you have accumulated over your?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot. Definitely, probably one of the biggest ones I see is when people go into, getting their, I'll just use this as one example, like life insurance is one example. So a lot of people, there's a lot of noise around life insurance, a lot of things on TikTok these days and other social media. But, it's a big cost for a lot of people, but it doesn't necessarily need to be. And so I often see people spending a lot of money on that when they don't necessarily need to, and they could use those dollars elsewhere. Doesn't negate the importance of life insurance. Life insurance is an extremely important part of a financial plan,
Why?
because we need to prepare anybody that we leave behind so that they are not hurt financially. So, for example, I'm married, Jay. I do not have children, but I have a spouse, and me and her split the cost of, household items and things like that, and, our mortgage and our, utilities, all that stuff. If I passed away, she would struggle to make it without my income. With only her income, she probably would not be able to maintain the same lifestyle. So, I will leave behind, a lot of money for her if I passed away unexpectedly, so that she would be okay financially. She'd be able to, take care of things, and financially she won't struggle, which will be a big difference maker for her, allow her to heal, properly and, figure out the next phase of life, which is already hard enough as it is. When you compound a financial problem on top of the emotional devastation of that loss, it is uh, very, very challenging. So.
What percentage of people would you say are excited to talk about setting that in order?
Not many, not many. I do think a lot of younger people see the importance. I've had a couple people refer to me just recently that are, have a kid on the way, and are really starting to think about that sort of stuff. But most people are not excited because it's thinking about death, thinking about what happens if we leave this earth, and that's not something that's fun to talk about. So it does make certain people not even want to talk about it at all, and almost feel as though you're, people that are superstitious almost bringing it on by, talking about it.
Is
Which,
there any insurance out there where if I go abruptly, someone can short all my enemy's stocks?
not that I'm aware of. No.
I just never thought of that till right now.
Yeah, no, no, not that I'm.
Maybe that's the new product. It's
There you go.
live. It's
It,
we have it here. Someone will invest into that.
yeah, maybe.
Now, were you thinking about like when you were young, did you have posters of life insurance around your bed or
No.
pictures of graphs on the
No,
market?
absolutely not. I don't even think I knew what it was until I got involved in this industry, to be honest with you. I don't think
What
I
was
knew
your
the importance.
aspiration?
Aspiration. I mean, I wanted to work in sports, so I went to school for college. Excuse me, not for college. I went to school for sport and recreation management, and I was working in college athletics when I got out of school. So always loved being around sports, and thought I wanted to go into that career path. So that was kind of where I started. But it wasn't a lot of room to move up. I graduated in 2008. Sports being in the entertainment industry, there wasn't a ton of jobs out there at that moment in that field. And I was working though in the field for about 3 or 4 years, and I enjoyed it, but it just didn't leave me much room for growth. And I did not want to go back to school to acquire more debt, which I kind of would have had to do. So.
Oh, on the debt conversation, like what impact do you see that have on people?
Yeah, I mean that's a huge concern. With what I was saying before, with people struggling to make ends meet, debt is a big portion of that reason. Credit card debt is just off the charts. Interest rates are sky high, and it's very challenging for some families just to make the minimum payments, let alone make any progress on paying the debt down. So it's a big challenge for sure. Even as as we all know, with mortgage rates being even higher, things like that. And so across the board, most families are paying more for debt right now than they were a few years ago, even for the same balance, in many cases. So it is a big challenge that a lot of people are struggling with. And I think most people don't see any light at the end of the tunnel. And so they kind of give up and they just figure, "Oh, I'll just never get out of debt," and don't even really they don't even try anymore, unfortunately.
It's this is interesting because uh, mortgage rates being higher than the past, inventory being lower, inflation having been up, are how afraid are people?
I definitely see some fear out there. I think there are people that are very concerned. I think that younger people seem to be, at least the ones I'm coming across, are doing a better job than their parents did as far as putting money away,
Huh.
and really preparing themselves. I wouldn't say that's across the board, but I would say on average, I have several young clients in their 20s who honestly are doing a remarkable job of putting money away and preparing themselves. Uh, Not all of them, of course, but yeah. So I do think that there's
Is there
definitely.
correlation with untraditional work or
Um,
traditional businesses or work or
Not
let?
necessarily. I think what it is just people realizing, seeing their parents or their grandparents, and seeing how challenging it was for them to save enough money to retire. In many cases, getting laid off at 58 and trying to find a job making the same income you were making is not easy, and that unfortunately happens. So I think a lot of the younger generation are seeing that and making sure they don't end up in that same situation.
Yeah, like how many years ago was 2008, 9? That's like what,
Yeah.
11, 15, 16 years. So all the 7-year-old would be 22,
Yep.
18-year-olds would be 11, 15, 20 in there.
In
Yeah.
the early 30s now. Yeah.
Yeah. So like that's the first time home buyer pool.
Hmm.
I wonder, how motivated that pool can be.
Yeah, it's definitely across the board. There's definitely a good mix, but I do see a lot of, despite the cost of homes and things, there are definitely a lot of young people that are prepared and are buying homes, and people like Brian are definitely busy. But there are the possibility is not there for a lot of families right now, unfortunately. And I think Brian said, about over the next couple of years, 30% of people may not be able to buy a home. So it's just becoming more challenging, more costly. You need more saved, and but planning and being proactive and getting ahead of the game, starting early, can put you in the right spot.
You mentioned Brian. For those that don't know, he's a real estate professional, and you guys work together. So what's been the value from the team approach as it relates to working together with customers? Like, how's that been valuable to the customer in your estimation?
I mean, it's been very valuable. I've always loved partnering with people in my career. Brian is fantastic at educating his clients and really providing a ton of value on the front end. before any, with real estate, you don't make money until the transaction's done, right? But Brian provides a lot of information, insight, and support on the front end to make sure that his clients are getting everything they need. And I love that. I've always taken that approach with my clients. So when me and him were able to sync up a couple years ago and really start to work together, it was perfect because we both take a very similar approach and really trying to be very proactive in educating and providing a lot more value than maybe we're being paid for on the front end.
Mm.
And it works out. And so I think his, as the clients that we have that, have worked with both of us, I think see that synergy, see the, ability to work together on that and know that we have their best interest at heart.
But based on working alongside him, what would you say as two of his core values that stand out to you?
I mean, integrity, honesty, loyalty, his work ethic, all of those things. I would say, integrity and honesty are two of the most important to me when it comes to business in particular. I see in my industry and even in his and really most industries where not everyone acts with honesty and integrity. And that's why I think sometimes people are worried to maybe go to a financial advisor or something like that because they don't, they're just concerned that either one, they don't have enough money, or two, that the person might take advantage of them. And so I see that as a challenge. So working with Brian's been great because he, like I said, treats his clients the same way I do.
How did you get involved with your organization? Was it through a mentor? Was it?
Through a family member, my sister-in-law has been a client for a long time, and so she had introduced me to her advisor. He mentioned he was looking to train some new people, and so I sat down and yeah, got involved. Never really thought about it. Finance was never anything on my radar. Never something I really contemplated prior to when I got involved. But the timing was right. I was at a crossroads in my career and decided to give it a try. And here we are, 12 years later.
Well, yeah, what did you learn early on that you otherwise didn't know?
More than anything, just the financial concepts, that I teach clients, things like the rule of 72. You mentioned compound interest before, things like, debt stacking and debt snowball. So, ways of paying down debt, and there's other, methods for that. The truth about life insurance and how it works. And obviously it's important, but it's not something that we should be investing hundreds and hundreds of dollars a month in most cases. Just some of the concepts that a lot of us were not taught, myself included, and just being able to provide that information for people. So it really caught me more than anything, just so I could learn for myself, so I could put myself in a better financial situation initially, and then being able to share that with others. It was a win-win.
What's the rule 72 for those that don't know?
So the rule 72, whatever interest rate you're getting, so let's say you're in a bank account and let's just say right now they're paying you 3%. You divide that interest rate into 72. So 3 goes into 72 24 times. Means it takes 24 years for that money to double. So if you're putting $1,000 in a 3% interest rate account right now, if it stays at 3%, it'll take 24 years, that 1,000 to become 2,000. Now, it's not very exciting. 24 years is a long time, but for long-term money and trying to build wealth, 3% typically isn't going to cut it.
And what about the debt stack?
Yeah, so just showing people debt stacking or debt snowball. Some people have heard of those. They're both ways of systematically paying debt down, focusing on one debt at a time. What a lot of people do is, try to throw a little bit of extra money at each of their debts, which seems beneficial. And it's not that that's bad, but it's actually more effective to target one at a time. And so just helping people figure out how to build that debt stacking program for themselves. It's a personalized, customized plan for each and every client. But it just shows them the most efficient way to pay debt down. And exploring that versus some other options like, say, debt consolidation or debt settlement or something like that.
What's debt consolidation?
That would be if you were just taking loans or taking debt, credit cards in most cases, and rolling them all into one, say, personal loan, or rolling them. In some cases, you could even do like rolling it to a 0% card. That could be considered debt consolidation, consolidating it all into one debt. But that's only a
Does that,
band-aid, of course. So.
yeah, well, that's my curiosity that like psychologically, could that lead someone to think they've done something when they've really expanded what they owe?
Potentially, I mean, if they're
Just
able to,
thinking out loud, it's like, oh, I've
it can.
consolidated. It's like instead
Yeah,
of owing 10 different people a little bit that adds up, I owe one person way more. Like,
right.
but
It's not.
yeah, it's interesting thought.
You still need to pay it off, of course, but in some cases, doing that can help you manage the payments better and things like that. So it's a case by case, when a consolidation, but you still need a plan to pay it off. So that's where I really like the debt stacking or debt snowball. I find is the most effective for most people.
Yeah, instead of owing a couple people that may not like me money, let me just owe one master everything.
Right.
I'm just so, but the snowball is that, for example, you have five things that you owe and they're all different monthlies and there's different principal and laser on one, maybe
Hmm.
the least amount principal, laser it, and then take whatever the monthly minimum was and add it to the monthlies on the others and do the next one and then do the next one and let it roll up.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. Pay the minimum on all the debts but one, whatever extra you can throw at the one, like you said, laser at it until it's gone, and then take that payment and reapply it to the next one. Typically it's the lowest balance. In some cases it might be the highest interest, might be better, but it depends on several factors. But it's much more effective to target one at a time than try to pay an extra $20 on each debt.
Also behaviorally, because
Yeah,
when they're all gone, now I've behaviorally been conditioned to invest. Now what
absolutely.
do we do with it?
Yeah, and it wasn't, and that's where a lot of it is, being able to pay that first debt off, right? If you've been paying debt for 10 years and you've paid nothing off, it's very discouraging and like I said, really deflating. And so if you can pay one off, it shows you, oh, I paid something off, and it feels good. And so it makes you actually stick to the next one even more so. You find a way to even put more money towards it.
How much of this is like mental and like mental, emotional, almost cultural rehab for those that don't haven't understood personal finance? Understood in the sense that they haven't benefited from the fruit.
Hmm.
Like how much of what you do is that? Because I'm thinking a lot of it's behavioral.
It is, and that's part of why like to call myself a financial coach, because a lot of times it is helping people to alter their behavior to some extent. And so giving them the tools, for me, they have to make the decision, right? The client, technically is the one making those decisions and putting the work in. I'm just giving them the tools and the resources to make a good decision, and also to help coach them, right? They need a coach. They need someone to give them that positive motivation.
Have you seen even people with very high or heard through your mentor network and peer network, those very high incomes that have tons of credit cards and things, and it's the same
Absolutely.
thing. It's just like right, you go to uh, Alcoholics Anonymous, people stand up. You don't know who they are, but I've been to a couple.
Yep.
Just observe it, guys, gals. And there could be a decamillionaire in the corner, a centimillionaire, and a homeless person.
Yeah.
So, like, have you seen that the income is varied in all of this?
Very much, yeah. Saving money is really nothing more than a habit. If you're not saving money when you're making 50,000 a year, you're probably not going to save much when you're making 100 or 200 or 500. So it's really just developing that habit. I have clients who make 50,000 a year that are in better financial shape than clients that make 200, just because they
Really?
had the right. Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Now, I'm not saying the 200 one doesn't have more ability to put themselves in a better place, but just what they actually do. Their habits are much better. They save money. Saving 10% of 50,000 is a lot better than saving 0% of 200. And so, or even 1% for that matter. And so it's really just about building better habits in most cases. And so saving money is nothing more than a habit. Paying down debt is nothing more than a habit. Not accruing debt is nothing more than a habit. And so, if you change your habits, by the great Wayne Dyer, change your habits, change your life. That's really what it comes down to. So financially, it's really just about us creating, developing better habits, and then sticking to them when it comes to our money.
Does your organization have a philosophy around mortgage debt?
I mean, yes and no. Not as strong as some places. A lot of people might be familiar with like Dave Ramsey, and a lot of the concepts he teaches are very similar to what I teach. But He personally thinks you shouldn't have any mortgage debt. I think there's a value in having it, especially if you have a really good rate. If you, we know the rates aren't there anymore, but if you got a mortgage when it was 3% or something like that, you very well can likely do better in an investment. And so paying that mortgage down at 3% for most people doesn't make a whole lot of sense if they can get 6 or 7 or 8 somewhere else, in an investment. And so, anyway, so from that perspective, but with the rates being higher, of course, that does make a difference. But I personally think that holding on to a mortgage debt is not a killer for most people if they're doing all the other things. That's the caveat, right? Are you saving? Are you putting away in your 401ks? Are you doing all the other right things? If you are, then having that mortgage for most people isn't going to kill them. But that's the thing, making sure they're doing all those other things.
Mm. Yeah, you brought up the 3%, 24 years. If we factored in inflation, it might have the purchasing power of like 1,250 or even less.
Hmm.
But like, how do you balance, um, yeah, it's like future Jay really doesn't like Jay today. How does one balance risk and reward in your mind, right? Like yeah, how does one balance risk and reward? Um,
I mean, it does depend on the client. It is very much, case specific, right? So there are clients who just can't stand the thought of debt. They don't want to have any debt. And, me saying, oh, your rate's only at 3% is meaningless to them. They just want to get rid of it, right? So with those clients, of course, I'm gonna coach them into making sure they pay off the debt because that's what's important to them. But not everybody's like that. Some people are more, say, risk takers, and they're willing to, take that chance on an investment and things like that. Doesn't mean being risky or stupid. It just means taking, a chance to get some growth on the money. So it definitely depends on the situation, on the person. It's a case by case, but the way that I do planning, it's really holistic. It's looking at everything from your income to savings to debt to retirement to you know, helping your kids, as they become adults. All of those things and many more are, all factors that we all have to consider. And some certainly are going to weigh more than others for some people. But that's where I'm looking at it and asking them the questions and finding out what's important to them and then helping them develop a game plan that's going to help them achieve their personal financial goals.
are there ballparks that you'd say around the where one could start with life insurance?
I mean, I highly recommend term life insurance, but I also, with a caveat there, there's a concept called buy term and invest the difference, and that's a big caveat is making sure that if you are getting term insurance, that you are investing the difference. Term insurance has a length on it, maybe it's 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, um, and once that term ends, you got to be prepared to have other money that you can leave behind if you make it past the end of the term. So that's one caveat and one thing that the industry as a whole, the insurance industry says, oh, you don't want term because you doesn't pay you back any money. But I always ask people one question. If your car insurance, asked you to pay more so they could save money for you, would you? If your health insurance asked you to pay more, but they'll give you back some at the end, or your home insurance, none of those work that way, right? So I look at the same way in life insurance. Why do you want the insurance company holding your money for you and having rules on when you can access it? I'd rather see
Mm.
clients have control of their money, put it in investments of their choosing, and just make that better decision that's going to help them in the long run.
Yeah, it's like if I had a second chance at life, would I take it?
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't. That's how I would think.
Right. Yeah. And it's really, like I said, it always is case by case, but the fact of the matter is, most people that end up getting a other type of life insurance, one of the types that builds cash, most of them are underinsured. They're walking around with, I just had a client, they were walking around with 250. They really needed closer to 1 million, but they were paying a lot for the 250. I was able to get them the million for less than they're paying for the 250 by a lot. So, getting the coverage you need is very important, and that's one way to think about it. So,
Would you say some of the core values of your company?
I mean, really honesty and integrity are huge. Putting the client first every time. is a huge one. Our mission statement as a company is to help families become properly protected, debt free, and financially independent. And that really speaks to what we try to do as a company. We, try to do those three things with every single client that we help.
Help families properly protected, debt-free, and financially independent.
Yep.
Uh, what would you say is the opportunity in 2025 for our listeners or opportunity set?
I think, it goes back to what you shared in the beginning with the quote, get started. No matter where you are, don't regret what you haven't done before. Don't, dwell on the fact that maybe you should have gotten started 10 or 20 years ago. Just get started. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. So don't delay any longer. Take advantage of retirement accounts. Use your 401k if your company's offering you a match, put it in. Get yourself prepared for the future. Start saving money, investing money, and find a trusted financial advisor, someone that can work with you, somebody that can help you achieve your personal goals, is going to listen to what your needs are. Uh, they can be a huge help. A good financial advisor is really invaluable in my opinion, and they don't have to cost much. And unfortunately, a lot of them do require you to have a lot of money to start. But there are some really good ones out there that don't. So, take a look around. Highly recommend
What do
getting
they
some.
actually do? Because our listeners are reading books and being exposed to, do it on your own. And
Right. And listen, I think in today's world, you can do it on your own if you want. But you have to really stay on top of it, and you have to take the time to plan and really be following things. And I find that a lot of people just don't have the interest or the time to do those things. And so be careful of the source, one, because just like there's a lot of great information out there, there's some of it that's not great, or might not be true for everybody. But even if you're going to do it on your own, it's still good to maybe find there are, financial advisors out there who are more like, they charge you for their time. So they can just come in and do an independent evaluation of where you're at and make sure you're doing the right things, that sort of thing. But I would just say be proactive with your finances. If you're married, talk to your spouse, get on the same page, and start planning your financial future.
Hmm. We had financial. Kevin Fink was recently on the show, very vocal about how his big epiphany that he was the financial advisor, but he got two inheritances and destroyed both.
Mm.
And that led him to like study psychology and these things. So like, what do in your what do the advisors that that you interact with do to be integrated to have their financial wellness together, simultaneously with helping their customers? If there's things that your company does or that you do, or to be integrated, so you're not the heart surgeon with a heart attack.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I mean, taking advantage of all the resources that I have for my clients. So one, having a term life insurance policy, making sure my wife's okay if I drop dead tomorrow, financially. Having the investments, right? Putting money away every month. Doing, making sure that I'm working towards my financial goals, paying my debt down, doing all those things. So, I stay on top of it, just like I tell my clients to, and I do a review of my personal financial situation at least once a year, a full review, looking in detail and just seeing where I'm at, seeing how I did last year, and making sure that I'm on the road to moving forward. But yeah, it is that's not uncommon. I come across a lot of people in different professions that, don't do some of those things, and I'm sure I can do better in some of those areas myself. But really just being proactive and like I said, just making sure that I am looking at both short-term and long-term, what I need to do to put myself in the right spot for the future.
There's Charlie Munger said, if you follow the incentives, I'll show you follow the incentives, or show me the incentives, I'll show you the behavior. How have you seen organizations in this space incentivize ethical, honest, integral, client-centered behaviors? Because there's a financial aspect to this that
Hmm.
What have you seen work from compensation or bonus or culture wise, but the financial piece, like
From
how do
a
you
from
balance that, right? These people, one could easily be compensated to look the other way or to not do what's best for the customer.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, won't go into the other side of it where, the unethical side and stuff, but unfortunately that does happen in the industry sometimes. But I think that the clients that are really succeeding are, number one, putting the client first and making sure that, they are recommending the right things to the client, and being available to all clients, regardless of their income, all that kind of stuff. I think a lot of companies out there are
Hmm.
encouraging their advisors to only work with certain, tier of net worth or tier of income and things like that. But I think the companies, in my opinion, that are going to be sustainable long term, mine being one of those, is the companies that are really focused on young people, getting them to make the right decisions early on and teaching them the right habits and kind of towards building wealth. As opposed to, hey, come see me in 10 or 15 years when you've accumulated, a couple $100,000. Um,
That's a great point because actually that creates, I think, challenges empathy.
mhm,
Because if I don't feel like if the expert or the professional rather is doing it based on values and not financial incentive,
mhm.
it's like having to listen to somebody at Thanksgiving dinner that I might call family. I don't want to hear that story again.
Yep,
That's an
yep.
interesting thought. To have a diversified client list.
Yeah, and it also, in my opinion, I think it helps, for me, being someone who really loves what I do and being able to help people. It allows me to truly help people. If I was only helping millionaires, I don't think I'd really be creating as much value for them. Like I'd still be creating value, but not the same way because they're still going to be okay, financially, even if I did a poor job for them. But your average family, if I do a poor job for them, they're in whatever they have is gone, and so it's very important for them to, be in the right situation and get the right help. And so, like I said, I do think that, the companies in my industry that are not ignoring the middle class, I think are really doing things the right way and creating that value.
I appreciate this conversation. It's a great culture conversation, right? Because how does the culture happen without the customer and their benefit?
Yeah, they can't.
Mm.
It's hugely important, and that's, we're all integrated, as far as that goes. The company, the advisors, and the clients are all integrated, and that's our symbol is three, concentric circles. So, we don't work without the three all being, synergy. So,
Chris, thanks so much for coming on the show. I really got to give a shout out to Brian Gunn for making this happen just by talking great about you
yeah, thank
and
you so
living the
much, Jay.
culture.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
If you're listening to this, where can people connect with you fastest?
Always answer my cell phone, 215-359-7369. That's the best. You can also, check, email me. I'm going to put my email too. Chris,
Sure.
Chris Crail 62@gmail.com. Those are the two
Awesome.
best ways.
Share this with a friend that you were thinking about who can't get ahead from debt and investing and is calling you every week about the stock market. And reach out to Chris, and we will see you next time on the Culture Matters podcast.